There used to be this massive disparity between the games that we could play at home and the kind of technology and the quality experience you could get in the arcades. And that was always really evident when you would see like the Spectrum or the Commodore 64 adaptations, the conversions of those coin-op games. I think Operation Wharf was one that I remember. It had the gun, the graphics were actually really cool, and then you would come and play it on your 64 or your Spectrum, and it was just nothing like it. I mean, it wasn't anything like Operation Wharf in anything but name. And that was always kind of depressing. What I think is actually really interesting about the Amiga generation is I think that was the first time that we really started to close that gap.
By the time the Amiga came out, there were already coin-operated arcade machines also using the Motorola MC68000, and you could see in the arcades what you could do when you spent $5,000 or $10,000 on hardware and built out a really fabulous game. And I'm thinking about games at that time like Marble Madness. Of course, we later licensed Marble Madness and brought it to the Amiga. That's the kind of thing that became possible. Suddenly, you could do things at home that were pretty mind-boggling.
When I saw Marble Madness for the first time on the Amiga, it was shocking. And it was shocking because, as far as I can recall, it was the first time that a video game on a home computer, pixel for pixel, replicated an arcade game.
It was the arcade version. There is no difference. There might be very slight differences, but the quality of that Amiga version was so fantastic at the time.
It looked like an arcade game, and that was the big excitement. You wanted that, I just loved its clean clarity.
Marble Madness just had a great look to it because it was shaded, 3D, and really replicated the arcade version precisely.
When Marble Madness came out, it was almost indistinguishable from what you saw in arcade. So it really proved the point that you could create a small personal computer that had the capability of an expensive arcade machine and very similar graphics. And actually that game, Marble Madness, was well suited to the Amiga because it scrolled these play fields. The background as the marble was rolling was a perfect operation for the chips.
The Amiga was a radically different machine in the sense that it had these amazing abilities to do, for instance, 3D graphics and good character animation games, awesome side-scrolling games. But then along came this title called Defender of the Crown.
The first time I saw Defender of the Crown was in Silica Shop in Sidcup, and I was looking at it thinking, nice video, that's really cool. When's the game coming out? No mate, that's the game. Yeah, whatever, just show me, will you? I had to ask the guy behind the counter to show me that it was actually running code. He said, have a go. Okay. Oh my God. I still remember playing the jousting. The jousting was great. It was like you were in a movie. And yes, a pixelated movie, but still, compared to the games we'd been playing only maybe a year or two before that, the graphical fidelity was astonishing.
It gave you this cinema experience where you just didn't play a game, but between the levels you'd see cutscenes where you, the hero, was getting together with the woman, or you, the hero, was demanding justice from the bad guys. And it was a game that brought you in a way that no other game had done before. And the game design itself was good. But there was this artist, Jim Sachs, who was the art lead on that project, and it was his magic that turned that game from a commonplace experience into something like no one had ever seen before.
When I started doing the graphics for Defender of the Crown, the tools were extremely primitive. It was still Graphicraft and Aegis images. So I was drawing castles one dot at a time. I'd do a sketch on paper, or I'd see magazine articles about castles, and I'd have that picture and then do something like that on the screen, literally one dot at a time, and put about 5 or 6 dots together, and that forms a block of stone. And then at that point, you could clip out groups of pixels and stamp them in as brushes. So I was doing that, stone after stone after stone. Finally, you have one tower, and then draw the grass and everything growing up to that. Very time consuming. And the other people involved with the project, which was still just basically Bob Jacob and Kellen Beck, were quite dismayed when they saw how slow things were going to be going. And after about probably 2 weeks, I had drawn the first castle on a hill and turned that in, and it just blew them away, of course, just so much different than anything else that they had seen. So then they could get an idea of what the whole game was going to look like, and started to get really excited about the whole thing.
The design itself reached for the kind of software entertainment experience that is commonplace today. Everyone's comfortable with the fact that software does that movie thing that it does. But Defender of the Crown, the CinemaWare title, was one of the first that made that a reality, where you were no longer just playing a game.
Because it demonstrated not just graphically, visually, this was, a quantum leap behind anything we had seen in 8-bit. It was certainly that, but it was the kind of game that just wasn't even possible.
There was nothing quite like Defender of the Crown before it came out. And it was definitely a signal for where video games could go. I didn't think all video games would take that route, but in terms of production values and the ability to draw in people who otherwise hadn't been interested in video games before, the idea that a video game could be a mass market activity and not just a niche, I think Defender of the Crown was, if not the first, and one of the very first to signal that.